All right, you're gonna think I lost my mind. Here is a Dodge that I would buy. Yes, the man who hates Dodge products, right? Well, have I lost my mind? Well, maybe I have. I don't know, I'm getting old, but it is a heavy-duty Cummins turbo diesel. Now, as I said over and over again, I don't think it was such a great idea when Chrysler and Dodge got bought by Fiat. Quality started to go down. They started using Italian diesel engines in some of their stuff. Not in this. Cummins, American, 6.7 liter turbo diesel engine. Now, granted, you might not need an engine this big and this powerful, but if you do, it's the engine to get. People get them because of their incredible towing capability. This thing's rated to tow 11,890 pounds. Now, that's what it's rated for. You can actually pull quite a bit more. I've seen people pull 20,000 pounds with these things. Now, you're not going to be able to go on a highway going 80 miles an hour doing that, but it just shows what one of these diesel engines can pull. It's got a 6-speed automatic. Now, yeah, you know, Dodge builds the bodies. The bodies are bodies. The problems that you have when a vehicle is problematic is either the engines go out of the transmission. A great Cummins diesel engine that can last a really long time. That's why if I was going to get a gigantic truck, I would definitely think about getting one of these. Now, it is a diesel. It is a big, heavy diesel, right? So it doesn't matter what he does, he gets 12 miles a gallon. Highway, city, that's what he's going to be getting because they're big, giant monster work trucks. You do not worry about gas mileage if you're going to get a truck like this. Like I said, if you don't need a big, giant diesel engine, hey, buy something else because you're getting all that power. If you need that power, runs a landscaping business, needs to pull all kinds of stuff, you're going to get bad gas mileage in any kind of diesel. When you're pulling any kind of weight, you get an engine that powerful. That's just the way it goes. And of course, with landscaping business, well, you're going to be getting in a lot of dirt, so it's also 4x4. And of course, this is a real truck, so it's got a real bed, too. This isn't one of these stupid trucks with a baby bed on it. As a matter of fact, this guy's got 2 of them, and the other one has a 5th wheel in the back for really towing heavy stuff. He can fit a bunch of his crew in here. He's got mixing equipment because he's a musician, too, but you know, they're very spacious. Now, he bought it used with 175,000 miles. I know a lot of people are going to say, oh, he must be insane buying that thing with that mileage on it, right? Not really. I've seen these things with 500,000 miles on them, and they're still going. And he obviously knew something about vehicles because, you notice, he did not buy a GM diesel pickup truck. Now, I had a customer who did the same thing as him, only instead of buying this Ram Cummins, he bought a GM diesel. The thing got to like 210, it started falling apart. If you want to learn from experience and you're going to buy a used diesel, don't think about buying the GM diesels. You ask anybody who knows diesels, they'll tell you the GMs don't hold up like the other ones do. Now, I mean, let's say you bought it brand new. It just started falling apart till they had 200-something thousand miles. Some guys think, oh, well, that's okay. Well, really, for a diesel truck, that's not okay. Look at all that chrome. It's a classic truck. It isn't all plastic like all the modern ones are. Of course, this is plastic. Well, the bumper's still nice and metal. This is plastic. It's a massive engine. And sure, it's kind of hard to get some of the back parts, but you really don't have to do much to these diesels. So let's start it up, climb up here. I'm getting old. I got to pull myself in. Start her up. Starts right up. Now for a diesel, it's actually pretty quiet. We got the hood open. You don't hear a bunch of horrible rattling noises like you do in a bunch of the Fords. Even though this thing's got 193,903 miles on it. 4-wheel drive systems, all done electronically. Now this guy's a big guy. It's a big truck. Check it out. Look at the space between my head and the roof. That's a long distance. If you're a big guy, hey, you're definitely going to feel comfortable in one of these things. As we put it in reverse, the camera system's not working on this at the moment. This is a serious work truck, and it's got some bash damage from work. Well, such is life. We really don't care. We have eyes. You can see it. Work trucks are going to get dings on them. No, he bought it with 171,000 miles and basically just changed the oil on it. I mean, unlike a lot of the other Chrysler Dodge products, you get a Cummins diesel. They're excellent vehicles. If I was going to get a diesel, I'd want the Cummins diesel because they have such a history of making good engines over the ages. Is this truck gonna make me eat my own words? Well, let's get out the scan tool and find out. So in we go. Close the door so it shuts up. Turn the key on. Nice black and chrome interior. Like you say, the gauges give you all kinds of information. It's doing the auto VIN read. In a work truck, it makes much more sense to have regular upholstery, fabric, not leather. It's going to hold up a lot better when people throw crap over it and just last longer. We found a few faults: radio, passenger door, driver's door. That's all the other stuff's perfectly fine. So we'll start with the BCM that has 3 codes. Lost communication with camera module. We know the camera's not working. Center stop lamp control. License plate lamp control. Well, that's all because the tailgate got hit and stuff's bent and broken in there. If he wants to fix it, go ahead and fix it. If he doesn't care about the backup, he's always pulling the trailer anyways. And that's obvious because it got hit. That has nothing to do with the problem the vehicle had from wearing out. It's just from running into stuff. That's what happens with a work truck. A problem with the video input, well, he doesn't really care. The passenger door module has a code. Door module internal is missing calibration. As in all modern vehicles, its computer modules all over the place, even working stuff in the doors well as door lock works. Everything else works. Who knows, he bought it used. Maybe at some time it was in a wreck and they didn't reconfigure the module in there. Driver's door module, we'll see what that is. Master switch, front right window switch. Door module internal, missing calibration. I know, that window works. That window works, so who really cares? All the information about how everything runs. There we go. We'll start looking at this data here. On the transfer case of the 4-wheel drive, it's all normal, it's all black data, none of it's red. Check it out, the intelligent battery sensor even shows the state of health of the battery, that it's 76.5% good, the battery. All kinds of data, it's all correct. Everything's complex these days, even the diesels. You gotta have a mechanic who knows what he's doing to mess around with these things, but if you change the oil regularly, you might have to see a mechanic for any kind of engine work for a long time. Now there's no backup camera, so I'm gonna have to look. Last time I drove a Dodge, I ran the neighbor's mailbox down. So I'll take it a little wider this time. For a big old diesel truck, it isn't all that loud. Yeah, they're not as quiet as gasoline vehicles, but these are nowhere near as loud as the old ones were. Big truck, but it handles perfectly well. Now, it does make a noise when you got the fan on, but that's because there's a piece of leaf or something in there, so we'll turn the fan off. Now the noise is gone. You want to be high and dry up in the air. It's a nice tall truck. Our drag strip, so we'll drive down here, and we'll look behind us. There's nobody behind us. Oh, yes, there is. So we'll have to go fast. We'll have to go. And here we go. Now you'll notice one thing. You didn't really hear the shifts, and you don't really feel them. This isn't a race truck, it's a big diesel work truck. It's not particularly fast off the line like the Hellcat Hemi pickup truck that I drove last year that had 700 horsepower. Now that was insane, but this has pulling power. This is a work truck, it's made. Pulling a lot of weight, not breaking down. It's almost to 200,000 miles. And it's had basically nothing done to it but oil changes. All right, so what's my conclusion? Yeah, he bought it with 170,000 miles. It still runs pretty much like new, and he's just changed the oil in it. And everybody's gonna say, Scotty, you're such a hypocrite. Now you're saying these are great. I'm only saying they're great Dodges because they got Cummins engines. You want a giant truck that pulls a lot of weight, and you don't care about 13 miles a gallon, towing, pulling things all over the place, you might think about one of these 2500 Cummins for heavy duty work. That's what it's made for. It can last many hundreds of thousands of miles. Look at this thing. Almost 200,000 miles. It still runs pretty much like new. Now the Jeep Cherokees are a different type of SUV. It is a Jeep. This one has a Chrysler 6-cylinder engine, but it's a reasonable size SUV. You can see it's unitized construction. It doesn't have an actual frame. It's the modern design, and you can hear the engine is ticking away. This is a Grand Cherokee, but this is the 4-liter inline 6. In a smaller vehicle, they're okay. They're a bit underpowered for these. Now, being a Jeep, the hood struts don't work anymore, so I'm bringing a stick. Yeah, it's not gonna fall down now. Now you can hear the engine ticking. It's a 6-cylinder inline 4-liter, and the vehicle's got over 200,000 miles on it. As we rev it up, you hear the engine ticking. Now that ticking noise you hear is internal to the engine. Now it's not rod knock, Because if the piston rods are knocking, when you rubbed it up, it'd go, and it isn't. It's a valve train noise. So I'll get up my headphones, my little electronic stethoscope, and start listening. We'll start probing all over the place. And the noise is definitely louder on the driver's side. Listen. You can certainly hear that. When I take the headphones out, stick my head in, it's definitely coming from over here, bouncing around. Well, in this case, it's the stupid fuel injector clicking, which is actually great news for the owner. He thought he might have had an engine problem. It's just the fuel injector making too much noise. Now, as they age, they're electric solenoids. They can make noise. If it runs okay, we're going to check the data to see if it's running okay. That's a big deal. It seems to be running good enough. All the injectors make a little bit of noise, but that particular one in the front's making the most noise of them all. So we'll climb inside, pick up this Autel scan tool, go to Diagnostics, Auto Scan, here we go. And while it's running its scan, realize I thought it was an engine noise revving up. I realized it wasn't piston slap, and I thought, hey, it's valve train noise. But when I used my listening device on the passenger side, I didn't hear much noise, but I heard it all on the driver's side, and when I put it on the injector, I could hear the injector clicking. So rather than guess with what sounds like this, it sounds like that, sounds often sound similar. But in this case, when I put that detector on the injector, you could hear it clicking away. That particular device cost me like 60 bucks on Amazon. They're worthwhile. The vehicle's got 210,000 miles. It's not showing any faults yet. It's looking good so far. There's not a single fault. Fault in the anti-lock brakes, he's not worried about that. He knows they're not working right. That's not something he wants to know what the noise is and what kind of shape this thing is in. And since it's all 2003, the scan tool takes a while. These are old style computers, pretty slow. I do have to say, this is a Jeep Grand Cherokee that was built while Mercedes-Benz owned the company. It was called Daimler Chrysler. They actually are well built. They started to make them quite a bit better. Unfortunately, when Fiat took over, they started putting Fiat platforms and the quality started to go down. And they started crap like, we're going to sell Jeep Renegades. Renegade, they had all those ads, right? Well, guess what? That's just a rebadged Fiat four-wheel drive vehicle. Has nothing to do with Jeep. And the quality of the other Jeeps also, as far as I'm concerned, went down when Fiat took over, and even more that Stellantis has taken over from Fiat. This is when Mercedes built these things, and they're actually better built. All right, now, don't you see? Everything had passed except for the ABS. That was the only problem. We don't really care about that, but what the heck, we'll see what the problem is. We did it, we might as well tell them what's happening. It is a very technical code that you need a service manual for, so we'll just tell the guy, forget it, you know your ABS doesn't work right, don't depend upon it. You're going to spend a fortune fixing it. And that's not what he brought it in for in the first place anyway. So what we want to do is the engine data. We know there's no codes. We already checked that. So we will go to live data. And here we go. We got all kinds of live data. What I first want to look at is see if it's got any misfires. Now the computer's not showing any misfires. So that injector, although it's making noise, especially at idle lower speeds, it sounds worse than it is. Realize with 210,000 miles, if you start changing fuel injectors because one's clicking, you might as well buy a whole set and change them all because they've all got the same exact mileage on it. So now we'll take it for a road test. See how it feels on the road. We're going to record the data. Now we'll start recording stuff. Now for its age, shift's pretty good. Doesn't make too much noise. Really handles pretty good for 210,000 miles. Now, as I said, this is a Grand Cherokee, and with the 6-cylinder engine, it'll go, but it's a bit underpowered compared to the V8 engines. V8 engines have a lot more torque. But this one isn't too bad because it's a basic rear-wheel drive. And even though that injector's ticking away, so far the computer isn't showing any misfires or anything. If you really want to test for misfires, you want a loaded engine. So you want to floor it, see what happens. Like I say, it's not a race car with a 6. V8s are, but I don't feel any misfires. Nothing's really acting up. The owner's probably going to be happy. He thought he might have had an engine problem. But it's not the engine, it's the fuel injectors. And as far as I can tell, we'll floor it again. It's not affecting the running one iota. It's not misfiring. It's not hesitating, it's shifting fine. Realize that when Chrysler was Daimler Chrysler after Mercedes bought them, they were actually putting better transmissions in them. The earlier ones had a lot of transmission problems, but the ones when Mercedes were built them, look at this. Smooth power shift, upshift smooth, even though it's got 210,000 miles on it. I guess the facts just came down that Mercedes-Benz was losing too much money from buying them, and they got rid of the company because it was costing them too much money. They actually improved these things. But like I say, when Fiat got them and now Stellantis, they're not improving them anymore, I'll tell you that. They've taken so many steps backwards compared to what happened when Mercedes owned the company. Most of these straight 6.4 liter engines with mileage have a tendency as they age to have a little bit of a rolling idle. Anyone who's driven one of these knows what it feels like. And for this mileage, it's actually relatively limited in this. You can hear it, I can feel a little here on the armrest, but really, other than that, it runs perfectly fine. Really driving this thing around makes me feel it's a big shame that Mercedes gave up with them. Well, they were losing money, you can't blame the Germans, but they were making a higher quality vehicle than they're making today in these things. With 210,000 miles, you can't even really feel the shifting gears. Now, it ran fine as I'm playing this data back, and there's nothing odd in it. So my advice in this case is to leave it alone. It's running fine. I wouldn't start messing with the injectors so they click a little. Who cares? And the owner also said he thought of oil leakage he might have somewhere. Yeah, make sure it's tight so it doesn't whack us in the head. And for an engine with this kind of mileage, I wouldn't worry about it. Tiny bits of seepage. All engines with this kind of mileage, they're gonna get a little wet. It's not dripping and burning on the exhaust. When you look and you see a little seepage like that, that's normal in any old vehicle. I wouldn't start taking it apart and replacing gaskets. The only thing I'd say is you can see the power steering hose is starting to get kind of oily. If you want to be a fanatic, you can replace the power steering hoses. But again, it's not really dripping on the ground or anything. Unless you're adding a power steering fluid all the time, all things seep a little. If you want to, go ahead, change the hoses. All cars leak a little bit as they age. Now, if it started squirting out, sure, go ahead, change all the hoses out. But if you're going to do that, the pump itself has a little seepage around the main shaft. Then change the pump, that's even more money. It steers fine. I'd leave that alone too. It's an old Jeep with a lot of miles. It still might run quite some time. It's not going to be perfect. Fuel injectors click, but hey, it's still running pretty good. An old Jeep Grand Cherokee. Made a lot better when Daimler was making them, when it was Daimler Chrysler. Yeah, I'd rather have a V8 engine, but with a simple rear-wheel drive, no four-wheel drive system, good enough for getting this thing around. 210,000 miles, still running decent. Yeah, the fuel injector's clicking, but who cares? You don't want to be a fanatic about an old car like this. If it starts misfiring, let's say my scan tool would have said misfire cylinder number 1, and you hear the number 1 injector clicking like mad, what the heck, put another injector on. But it's running perfectly fine, and truthfully, I've seen those things go years, clacking 5 times louder than this, and they're still running, okay? So, hey, it's your money. You don't like the noise, go ahead and replace them. But if it runs as good as this, there's no need to if it's not misfiring. Such a shame that the company's been going downhill since Fiat and then Stellantis bought them. They used to make pretty good vehicles. Could last quite some time, but today, it's a different story. Some of them have those Italian diesel engines that are piles of junk. Some of them are just Italian vehicles, like the Jeep Renegade. It's just a rebadged Fiat, really. They used to make these Cherokees pretty good, but you know, now, like everything else, money's the bottom line. They're going to make them cheaper. You pay more for less. These old ones, hey, they can last quite some time. This one it's still got a lot of life left in it. Today, as you can see and hear, I got an El Camino. Actually, it's my grandson's El Camino. Okay, the El Camino, what is it? Well, technically, it's a truck. It's actually based on a Chevy station wagon. Chevy wanted to compete with a Ford Ranchero, so they got rid of the station wagon part and put a pickup truck bed on it and a really nice curved windshield. Now, they sold over 500,000 of these things, many of them in the South, and you can tell this is a Southern car. You can also tell by the exhaust, this is Tennessee, they don't have any inspection laws, so it's straight pipe. Technically, it's a pickup truck, but it's really a station wagon with a bed on the back, only at the same time, it is a muscle car. So basically, it's a vehicle for all seasons. As we look under the hood, it's got a big old V8 engine. These things have a lot of grunt. So it is a muscle car. And it is rear-wheel drive. whoever owned it before put this nice new gas tank on it. Funny, because it says Holley Sniper EFI, and that is a Holley electronic fuel injection system. But this is actually an Edelbrock 4-barrel AVS carburetor. Got a lot of chrome parts on it, and it's been modified. They have both electric cooling fans and a mechanical fan, so this baby isn't going to overheat. You can modify these things to your heart's content. V8 engines, there's all kinds of mods you can do. Still got the AC accumulator, but it doesn't have AC, as you can see. There is no air conditioning compressor. It does have power steering, which you want, and a really nice chromed alternator on it, right? Even the water pump's chromed. But the air conditioning isn't hooked up anymore. So it does have fully functioning power brakes. The brakes are perfectly fine. And it's really good enough. It's got disc brakes in the front, drums in the back. Realize most of the racing these things do are just kids street racing around. You don't need 4-wheel discs, really. You know, in a race, of course, they would overheat in the back from stop, go, stop, go, stop, go, stop, go on an actual racetrack. But for street racing, discs in the front and drums on the back are perfectly fine. It's going to stop it. If you really wanted to go whole hog and race them, yeah, then you'd want to drill the rotors and put discs in the back and take the drums off. But for all intents and purposes, the way it's set up here is perfectly fine. I gotta keep my foot on the gas until it warms up because the choke is fully open in the warmed up position. So the carburetor is set for warm operation, but it's cold outside. So we gotta wait a few minutes for it to warm up. Now this is a luxury version because it's got power windows and they still work, albeit very slowly. It's a high-end El Camino. But that said, it still has a lot of power for zooming around. We'll take it out to our little drag strip. It's an American car, so, you know, you kind of point it like a ship. You're going to see what this old El Camino still got left in it. Great for taking on the country. Nothing beats that V8 sound. And it's a fun toy to drive around. Just don't overreach its boundaries because there's only so much of a curve you can take. It's been modernized. It now has a digital speedometer. So all in all, this thing's in pretty good shape. Now, if you're looking for one, you want to make sure it's not rusted away because these things can be rust buckets. Now, this has been a Southern car, so it's not that big of a deal. But even then, as is often the case, the guy's completely done the floor pans over. They're super solid. They've all had re-welded steel put in. Those things almost always go out, but you can see, hey, it's still in pretty solid shape. The windshield's in good shape. These windshields are pretty expensive to get those curved windshields. And the body, you can hear, it's not all Bondo, except for the plastic part and the bumpers, of course, because it is an 81. They started to use more plastic in those days. It's a GM. My grandson put his Camaro wheels on it. And it looks pretty good with these Camaro wheels. There's a lot of stuff you can fool around with these things, modify to your heart's content. So if you're looking for a muscle car, hey, why not get a truck instead, which is what it technically is, even though it's on a station wagon frame with a pickup bed in the back. It's still pretty much a muscle car. And these things stand out. A lot of them rusted away, a lot of them got wrecked. If you can find one in a good shape like this that isn't all rusted out, just be sure you check for rust first. Because it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside, if it's all rotten underneath, the frame is shot on these things and all rotten away, you don't want to mess with it. It's just too much work. And even if you don't live in a state like Tennessee, where they don't do testing of it, safety or emissions, this is an 81. Almost every state that I know of, that's grandfathered in, so it doesn't need emissions testing. So it doesn't have to have a catalytic converter. Doesn't have to have a test done to see if it's polluting too much. It's too old, and they grandfather them in. So you don't have to worry about all that garbage every year where you got to get it to pass a test so you can drive it. These are seen as classic cars. Have a lot of fun with them, and you don't have to screw around with the old inspection rip-off where they're trying to sell you a bunch of crap because they got a license and they can do it by law. Hey, you can bypass the law by getting something like this that's grandfathered in the first place. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.